Welcome to the Election University podcast, a weekly show where we hear from industry experts who share tips and tricks for winning campaigns. Whether you're running for office now, thinking about it for the future, or just want to know more about campaigns and elections, Election University is for you. With Election University, click, learn, win. And now your host, Jason Bennett and Rainey Cohen.
Welcome to Election University podcast. We are live from Nashville right now.
Hey, everyone.
That was Jason Bennett. I'm Rainey Cohen. And thank you for joining us today. If you are not familiar with why we're in Nashville, we are here for the American Association of Political Consultants Pollie Awards and Conference. Yep. Right? Is that correct?
That's correct. Well done. For a first timer, that was pretty well done. Yeah, so we're interviewing guest speakers and vendors here today to talk with us a little bit about the work that they're doing for down ballot campaigns.
Yeah, and so Jason, what is your favorite part of this conference so far?
Oh God, my favorite part of the conference will probably be tonight at the Pollie Awards. It's actually it's a fun ceremony. Are you going?
I'm thinking I will.
Yeah, it'll be excellent. That's usually really fun. You get to see the ads that made the mark and made an impression last year, and people will put their mail on display. It's fun.
Cool.
Tonight.
Well, my favorite part of the conference so far was on day one when there was an hour that included a series of TED-style talks, and everyone had about 7 minutes to present. And our guest today is China Dickerson, who was one of those presenters. And your whole topic was on people of color in politics and how there are just not enough. And I was like, please come on the podcast, and can we talk about that? So I'd like to introduce China. You have an amazing resume and extensive background. Will you please share with us who you are and how you got here?
So I was originally not going to work in politics, hadn't even considered it. I was going to be an attorney and make lots of money, do the corporate route.
Likely story.
Yes. And then what happened, long story short, so I'd been on this, going to law school track. One of my friends, when I was in my third year of law school, decided to run for city council. And she wanted to run against a guy who had been in, I think it was 13, 14 years at that time. And actually he wasn't horrible, right? And so her deciding to run against him, I thought she was crazy. She asked me to be her treasurer. And I said, sure. That was just, making sure we didn't go to jail. So that was fine. And then it only being two of us, things got more intense. She started getting more support. So she asked me if I would kind of keep her organized and, help her reach out to people and do some other things. So got on as her campaign manager. We won. And I was like, oh God, I can't curse on this, can I?
Oh yeah. Please do.
Oh, okay. I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. We won. And so that is what propelled me more into I then went to Ready for Hillary, Emily's List. Now NARAL Pro-Choice America, really got involved with the Young Democrats of America. And mostly I appreciate working down ballot races with people of color, with women, with young people, et cetera. I think that's where our gems are. And so that is what I currently do as well.
So you're in national leadership in the Young Democrats.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that is like, and are you recruiting people to run for office in that capacity, or
so my official title is chair of the Women's Caucus of Young Democrats of America. We do not recruit folks to run for office, I would say in a formal capacity. A lot of the different caucuses, we have the Women's Caucus, the Black Caucus, the Jewish Caucus, so caucuses for all of the different demographics within the organization. Some of them do more formal recruitment work. In the Women's Caucus, we really try to put out the names of all of the young women.
Yeah.
Because I'm the chair, of course, we focus too on people of color. So we try to put out the names and, advertise, help promote them on social media so that our membership, who is very hungry to get involved, whether it be knocking on doors, phone banking, or donating money, give them that information so they can then go out in their districts where they are in the country and support those women running.
That's great. What are you seeing this year in terms of women and people of color running?
There's a lot more.
Yay!
They are a lot more, if I had to describe them, activist-y, right? Like not traditionally into politics. A lot of them, and it's very interesting, and I think we do need to change how we work with folks. I've been saying that throughout this conference, because a lot of them don't even define themselves as a Democrat or Republican. A lot of them have no clue actually how government works in a technical capacity. They're more interested in whatever I need to figure out about how to change this shit, whatever that, like, that's why I'm running. And a lot of these folks actually do have experience as far as being in the community, so they know what they're talking about as far as the issue. They might just not have the political acumen or the technical expertise in government, right? So I am seeing a lot more people of color, a lot more women, a lot more young people, but I think because they don't have that traditional establishment thing about them, that they're not being supported by the establishment organizations, and that's unfortunate. So as a person who works within the establishment and knows those people, I'm trying to get the establishment to be more open-minded about helping those people.
Yeah. What does that involve?
That involves a lot of me doing things like this, standing up and saying, white men, we love you, but you might have to step aside or recognize that there are different types of people running, and not just running, but that people actually like them, like the people actually want this emerging, this emerging electorate. So a lot of sometimes getting on people's nerves, a lot of being threatened in a way of you're going to end your career if you don't be a little nicer to the people who have all of the money, which is usually the white men.
Right.
But actually, I'll push back on myself a little. I think all of us are very slowly, though, even white men, recognizing this country is starting to look less and less like me as a white man. But that's a lot of what it is, being on Twitter, where are the black people? Where are the brown people? Where are the women? What's going on here? So I push back a lot on folks.
Yeah. I mean, I will say for me as a first timer at this conference, I knew that this industry is very white and very male, but I didn't really know until I looked around the ballroom at a general session, and I was like, damn. Yes. There are more women here than I thought there would be. And so I was like, all right, women, but they're all white except for you and maybe, maybe a few other. So what do we need to do to change that as an industry? Not just people running for office, but how we get people working in and around politics, in and around government, so that we're building the pipeline everywhere.
Yeah. I think, so I was in a session yesterday, I think it was the Dem Caucus session yesterday, and Trey Nix, who's a white guy, said this, and I think it was really on point. Because women and people of color have not been traditionally a part of the process, particularly in these leadership positions, whether it be at consulting firms or as campaign staff, or once you get into the government as staff for these elected officials, because we haven't traditionally been a part of that, our level of experience and engagement is different, so our resumes might look different. Mm-hmm. So, for example, in the example he gave, which is spot on, if you're looking for a campaign manager, if you're looking for someone with a resume of having worked 3 to 5 campaigns in a leadership capacity, then you are ruling out a lot of people of color and women, right? So what you should look for more is, has this person been in a position where they had to be organized, where they had to manage people, where they had to... Because that's really what a campaign manager is, just making sure, keeping the trains running and that they don't run into each other, right? On time and not into each other. So we have to be more flexible as well in what we're looking for. And I actually think that's the biggest thing, because we're all qualified based on what the qualification is. Right. So we have to do that. But the biggest thing I also always say is, and I said in my TED Talk, couple of days ago, is positions of power. So if you're just hiring us to be the field associate or a field organizer or some of these positions that are less respected, like a political director, right? If it's not campaign manager, fundraising director, field director, then you bringing us on for these lower roles is not helpful.
Yeah. And one of the other things that I struggle with too in this business is the mentorship is lacking as well. It's not even just the hiring principles, but it's also the mentorship.
Right.
So Rainey and I are both gay, and I think that there are a stunning lack of gay mentors politically to help, lift other LGBTQ folks up. And I don't know if you feel the same way, in communities of color.
I think that is true across the board. When you work in an industry, this industry, I think, is run a lot like the corporate world. We're at a conference where it's a lot about the consultants, right? And we want to make money. Right. So when you want to make money, you want all of the clients to you. If you mentor someone, there's a possibility, right, that they might get just as good or better than you. So now they're your competition. So we have to, again, change our priorities, and we have to want to, as we come up, grab people and bring them along with us. But yeah, I think that's true across a lot of communities that are oppressed. So that includes the LGBT community, people of color. White men, white cisgender straight men tend to be really good at okay, I'm going to train my nephew, my son, sometimes even my wife. So if something happens to me I'm going to bring this person in. We have the same last name, so my company's legacy can continue. They're really good at that, and we need to be better at it.
Yeah. I'd love to know, what has your favorite part of this conference been? You're also a first-timer here. What have you enjoyed most so far?
So one, I love that it's in Nashville. I had never been here, and usually when I attend conferences, national conferences, they're on the coast, right? Like DC, New York City, Los Angeles. Yeah, they're usually so I like that it's middle America, because I think you then get a diversity of folks who don't, even financially, who aren't able to travel to the coast. I think my favorite part, actually, the caucus meetings.
I enjoyed those too.
Yes. What I thought would happen at the caucus meetings was that the folks who were on the panels, who were the more establishment folks, would not get pushback. But these audiences are lit. These folks are no, I have a real question for you. What we're doing is not really working. How do we change this? Yeah. So I have been very appreciative of how people are keeping it real and forcing folks to rethink how we're doing what we're doing.
I mean, I don't know what his name was, but there was a person who stood up in the Dem caucus yesterday, and I think it was off of your question that you had asked, and he was like, I've been doing this for 13 years, and I'm the only person of color in the room every single time.
I remember that. Yes. No, I think that was really good. So I am impressed at the level of comfort that people have, or the willingness to say, even if I'm not comfortable because the question needs to be asked, I'm asking the question. So that's encouraging about the profession. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your work that you're doing right now, and maybe some of the favorite kinds of clients that you're working with right now.
Yes. So I am, my 9 to 5, I would say, is as Deputy Political Director at NARAL Pro-Choice America. I am excited about what's happening in the pro-choice movement. I think that, so we actually just came from a race, Marie Newman, a primary. Marie Newman was running against Dan Lipinski in Illinois. Dan Lipinski is anti-choice, anti-LGBTQ, anti-immigrant, anti all of the things. And so it was nice to see, even though my experience teaches me that we don't want to get involved in primaries, because we just want a person with a D behind his name or her name. The fact that we said, no, we actually are going to hold you to more standards. You have to actually care and want to work for the people. That was very encouraging to me, because again, that had not been my experience prior. So I do that. Young Democrats of America, that working with young women under 40. I am also working very hard in my spare time, if I have any, doing things like what I'm doing at this conference, right? Just trying to hold people accountable and asking questions, getting on Twitter and saying, hey, you're saying you support people of color and women, but in action, I don't see your organization doing that. I just hear you going against Trump and all of the things on Twitter. Right. So holding people accountable. And then the last thing is, if someone says, they have been doing at this conference, which is great, hey, can you get me more resumes? Me also walking the walk, right? Not just saying we need to do things, but trying to actually send my friends and colleagues I have that are women, young people, people of color to these consulting firms and then saying, hey, I sent you these resumes. Why are all the people still white men? Why are they all still straight? Why are they all still cisgender? Like, why? What's happening? So keeping people accountable.
Yeah. What do you think the Democratic Party is getting wrong about our work on race?
I think that we think
if
that...
you can speak for everyone.
Yes.
Right now. If you could just take that mantle and speak for every single person.
Yes.
I
think that Democrats... I think that we think that as long as we keep saying we're progressive, then that will actually show up. Yeah. I think it's unfortunate that Democrats have just as much of an issue, and which is, I said this actually in my speech, Democrats have just as much as an issue with diversity and inclusion as the Republicans. That's just a fact. And so we talk a lot about it, right? Which is what I was saying, but I don't think we do enough action. So when we talk about, getting more invested in Arizona and Nevada and middle America, how black women show up all of the time to help us win these elections, but then we're not working with black folks. We're not working with Latinos and Hispanics. We're not putting them in positions of power at our consulting firms. Then how are we supposed to translate this on the ground, right? So Democrats need to actually be progressive. Yeah. We need to actually do that and not just say that. Yeah, do better.
Yeah. So we've touched a couple of times on the holding positions of power for people and putting them in there. Do you have thoughts on how to recruit or advertise for those jobs better to communities of color who might not be seeing them in the traditional ways?
Yes. At least every white person I know of, I'll just use people of color for example, knows of a person of color. Now, while they might not be great friends with them, people know me. People know Simone Sanders, who's on CNN. People know Angela Wright. So white folks know some black people that they could reach out to. They know women. They know young people. The question is, do you now want to actively engage these people? That's all it really is. And not just actively involve, as I was saying, is have a conversation with them, because I talk to my white counterparts all the time about, I talk to HRC all the time about how it cannot just be white male, how we can bring in lesbians, how we can bring in transgender. So we talk about it, but then I don't see a change. So we just have to actually do it. I will say, to be fair, that, yeah, it's difficult, if you want to use that word, to find black folks who are qualified, to find women who are qualified, because they're not sitting next to you. They're not sitting in your immediate grasp.
You have to look a little bit harder.
You have to actually, oh my gosh, let me go to the woman over there and ask her if she knows of other women. So yeah, you have to put forth some effort and be intentional about recruitment.
Yeah, that just got me thinking about a whole bunch of follow-up questions. I mean, it's true. I mean, because I think it's the one thing that Democrats could really do a better job of. I struggle with this. I mean, we're in Washington State, and our diversity quotient there is not great. The Pacific Northwest is just notoriously not very diverse. It's improving, but it's not great. And this election year, we're hiring a bunch of campaign managers. They are predominantly white, predominantly male, and everyone's just sort of like, well, we're trying, and it's like, well, I don't know that we're trying really that hard. At the end of the day, and so as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about what could we be doing better. And I don't even think it's just campaign work specifically. It's getting people in positions at labor and getting, in our interest groups and funders and then lifting all of those boats, helping people climb the ladder a little bit faster. I don't know what the formula is to kind of get this working.
Black and brown people give tons of money to religious organizations. So the idea that the money is not within, because our groups tend to fall in the lowest parts of the economic side, the idea that we don't have the money to give is incorrect. It's just we have not been convinced that that is the place to give the money. One, because we don't see ourselves there. And two, because we continue to hear, for example, with the Dreamers, we see Nancy Pelosi standing on the floor for 9 hours, only drinking water. You're like, oh my gosh, she's a badass. Like, this is cool. But then what came out of that? Right. And so we need more, as Jay-Z would say, you need more people. Like, we need more receipts. You need more, because we're not seeing evidence of the way we've been supporting the Democratic Party now for decades. And so again, I just think it takes, and I'm glad you brought up labor, and because it's just across several different types of organizations, particularly because labor represents a lot of times Latinos and Hispanic folks. Right. Those are the folks who are doing the hard work, like in this hotel, right? At construction sites, like at school. I mean, these people are doing the hard work. So we just have to be more intentional, and not even in a way that's going to exhaust us, which is why it upsets me. I'm like, it's actually not hard to just go to a woman and say, do you know other women? Do you know other Latinos? Do you know other Black folks? And again, and this is very important, redefining what you actually need, what actually qualifies you for these positions. Right. It's just like the equal pay thing, right? Like, if we're always asking women when they apply for jobs, what did you make at your previous job, to determine what they should make at the job they're now interviewing for, that doesn't make any sense. Right. You're starting still at the deficit. So yeah, we just have to change how we're thinking about what qualifies this person for the job.
Yeah. I'm also struggling with the retention part too, right? Especially in political work, that seasonal nature of it. It's hard to retain just good talent. Yeah. Generally. And what could we be doing better at the end of a campaign season before the start of a next campaign to kind of keep people in the pipeline?
I think that's
we lose so many people that way.
Yeah, the party organizations, their job. I also think, though, I'm hesitant to say this because I need to research it a little bit more, but the attempt to unionize campaigns, I think we might see moving in that direction, a way that you can keep folks on and continue to pay them. Sort of in the way we do teachers, like during the summer break, they can have summer break jobs, like camp jobs or some. So similar in the way we work with teachers to keep them being paid throughout the year. We should figure out a way, because also what's happening with Democrats that's unfortunate is we don't get benefits a lot of the times. Sometimes we're working crazy hours. So campaign jobs are very unlike any other sort of occupation as it relates to security and stability.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, and I've always thought that, like, the campaign structure just runs counter to what Democrats claim to believe about how you treat workers, how you pay workers, how you give them benefits, labor organizations. So, I don't know what the answer is. I think that's a really good idea, comparing it to teachers. Like, if people had some way to bridge the gap, it always crushes me. My wife works campaigns, and over the holidays, so many people are unemployed. Yep. And that's just a huge bummer.
And that's why we call it the young person's game, right? Like, being on an actual campaign staff, we say it's a young person's game. You don't have children. You don't have a mortgage. You don't have all of these things that would require you to have some sort of financial stability and health insurance and all of the things, right? So yeah, if we want to retain talent, listen, if we want people of color to get the experience that we're saying they need to actually be campaign managers, well, they're like, no, I have to do something else while I'm doing this other thing on a campaign because I can't make enough money or have the stability I need.
Yeah. So that's one of the ways I think we can, like, break down a barrier to recruit more women or people of color or whoever wants to be involved. Do you have thoughts on other ways to break down those like barriers to entry?
I think we should also, I don't know if it's the DNC or some of the party organizations, some of the labor organizations, some of the, even I would say, super PACs and lobbying firms. I think we should go to colleges and universities. So recruit in a way that corporations recruit. And I think that should then include community colleges, and it should include HBCUs. Because when you go to a community college or HBCU, those are places that are more likely to have these groups that we're talking about, because they're unfortunately oppressed groups in this country. So I think that might be a way to pull in more people. But you have to, and I keep saying this, they have to be positions of power.
Right.
Hiring folks, and actually there was I think it was the Fannie Lou Hamer report that came out of the Rabin Group. They did a report sending to all organizations, wanting them to count up, the Black folks and the women. And it came back, these are all Democratic organizations. It came back that, they had a lot of percentage wise, but when you look to leadership, there were none. So we are, again, this redefining like what qualifies you. And when we're thinking of measuring how well we're doing, what does that mean? Yeah. And that might mean, and I think it has been effective to expose these organizations, to expose the D-TRIP, to expose the DS, to say, hey, the Democratic, actually the Congress and Senate, they refuse to release where they are with staffing people of color and women, and they don't want to do the research and then publicize it. And it's because it's bad. So we have to be held to our values and standards, held accountable. And so that is one of the ways to break the barriers, is just start embarrassing folks.
Yeah. Rainey and I are involved in this organization called Institute for Democratic Future, and it a civics program for young adults, essentially. Mm-hmm. And it's a 6-month program. And I did a training for the campaigns and elections weekend. And this woman in the program, I was talking about running for office, and nearly everyone in the class raised their hand, which is fairly remarkable. Mm-hmm. And we have a pretty good, I think it's 54% people of color.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
So it's a good recruitment.
Over 50% women.
Yeah, we did a good job in recruitment this year. And one of the women stood up and said, the thing that I have a hard time with is I have to be perfect on a campaign trail when I run. I can't make mistakes. I can't do anything. I have to work 10 times harder than a mediocre white man.
Yep.
And, I stammered for a little bit in the answer because I don't have a good response for that. Mm-hmm. I said, I think that's changing. I think the voters, particularly this year, are hungry for candidates that don't fit a particular mold.
Yes.
And what are we going to do? Not do it? Are you just not going to run because the system sucks? We have to change it, and you are going to change it. That was my best answer. Is that a wrong answer? Did I guide her incorrectly, or how would you advise somebody?
I think some things we can change right away.
Yeah.
Right? I think there's, for example, if you are a partner at a consulting firm, the next time you have a senior staff meeting, if you see that all of the people sitting around your table are cisgendered white men, you can immediately say, okay, let's look at who we have working here. Maybe we should move some of those women, people of color, maybe we should move some of them up, or let's hire for a new position on leadership, right? So those are some things you could fix in the next 6 months to a year, right? Other things will just take time and embarrassing people. For example, Donald Trump does all of these crazy things, and you will see some folks on Twitter saying, if this had been Barack Obama, he would have been done. So doing things like that, bringing attention to the hypocrisy, that takes time. But she's right. What we can't do is say, they teach you when Black folks, when you're young, they say you have to run faster. It's the same thing with how you deal with the police. Like, we get these conversations when we're young from our parents. This is how you have to conduct yourself. It sucks and it's unfair, but that's just the way it is. I think, unfortunately, we're still having have to have those conversations, in order for us to be successful and live. But I think that times are changing. So we do just have to continue to be our best selves, even though we understand that standard is different for us than it is for other folks. We have to continue to be our best selves, hold people accountable, call out the hypocrisy, and hopefully things will change. And I will say, at this conference, I've been most approached by white men saying, what can I do differently? Which is great.
Is it good, or is it exhausting?
For me, it's not exhausting.
Yeah.
I will say, though, to be fair to other folks, I understand why it would be exhausting. For me, it's not exhausting. Yeah, for me, it's not, because I am willing to carry that load for my people. So I am often in positions where I feel like I'm the token Black person or the token woman. And I'm not as offended, because what I then do is I say to myself, okay, you're going to give yourself this amount of time to be that person, to be the token.
Right.
And if they actually don't change, then you need to be out of here.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I will indulge you for a little while, because you might be genuine about wanting to help and wanting. And so I will indulge you. I will give you the tools to the best of my knowledge. I will refer you to other Black folks, people, our LGBTQ brothers. I will refer you to other folks who I think might be helpful with what you say you're trying to do. But after that, I'm not going to give you the opportunity to say, I know China Dickerson, and then use that as so that means I'm hip to women and people of color. No. We have to see action.
So I know you have somewhere to be.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
What is one thing that Jason and I can do today or tomorrow before we leave Nashville to hold someone here accountable for something?
Yes. I think you should continue to, the best you can, interview folks who are in establishment organizations and establishment positions and ask them the hard questions. Some of those folks are here and they're actually willing to do that. Sometimes you don't want to speak publicly because you don't want it to be held negatively against your organization. But I think, so not just here, but generally with your podcast, continue to reach out to folks and ask them the hard questions. I don't know so much though what you can continue to do here, except for you and Jason just continuing to have the conversation even amongst yourselves. The more folks, again, we have publicly asking questions, requiring, and don't stop asking the questions on Twitter, on Facebook, on the social media sites. Sometimes what I do as well, which gets me in trouble, is I will tag or hashtag folks and say, hey, so-and-so, I have a question for you. Now, they might not answer it, but the question has been asked, right? So you can't say, oh, I didn't know about, because that's oftentimes with the responses. I didn't realize, or I don't know Black people who are qualified. I don't know women who are qualified. Oh, those people actually want to do this type of thing. Because that's another one, oh, they aren't interested in doing this. They're interested in doing that. No. I have a question for you. Can you respond? Oh, you don't want to respond? Okay, that's fine.
Your answer.
That's your answer.
Are you interested in running for office someday?
Oh, my goodness. I have been asked this 50 million times.
How many is it going to take?
50
million in one?
I will never say never. I don't know if I have the temperament, because I will tell someone where to go, and I will actually give them directions for how to get there. Some people won't give you directions. They're like, figure it out on your own. I will give you, I will give you directions for where you should go. So it's not out of the question. Whatever I need to, and I'm saying never say never, because whatever God or the people tell me I need to do to free our people and to get us out of these systems of oppression, I can't talk about it and then not be willing to do the things to get us to where we need to be. So never say never.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wow, a big thank you to China Dickerson of Dickerson Strategies and Deputy Director of NARAL Pro-Choice America. Thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your candor and your sense of humor and helping us understand a little bit more about what the Democratic Party can do to increase diversity within our party. And thank you to our listeners. Thanks for joining us in Nashville, Tennessee this week. We've got a few more episodes coming out from Nashville, and we appreciate you tuning in to us on another episode of Election University. If you could pop on over to iTunes, we really appreciate the ratings and reviews. We certainly read them, and we want to improve the service. So if you have any feedback, let us know. You can also send us an email at podcast@electionu.com. On behalf of Rainey Cohen and myself, Jason Bennett, your co-host of Election University Podcast, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you for listening. This week's episode has ended, but the campaign fun doesn't have to. Head on over to www.electionu.com, where you can access all of the links mentioned in today's episode, as well as the show notes. There you can also sign up for regular announcements or register for our campaign school. It's your very own online personal trainer for winning campaigns. www.electionu.com. Click, learn, win.